Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakachaja Satara Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanavenda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Nityarupa Krishna Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakachaja Satara Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Govinda Gopinath Chamakund Radha Kundigiri Govardhan Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhāgavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga and Srila Prabhupada. Reading from the Srila Prabhupada Limamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled Krishna's Great Soldier. Ice cold. Whatever his condition, Srila Prabhupada always maintained his essence, aggressive in preaching Krishna consciousness, thoughtful of others, humorous, and completely devoted to Krishna. When Abhiram joined them from England and exclaimed that Srila Prabhupada's Bombay quarters were fit for Indra, the king of heaven, Srila Prabhupada broke into a big, sustained smile. When Tamal Krishna, after being absent for a few hours, returned before Prabhupada and explained, "I was just resting because I was tired from the trip." Srila Prabhupada replied by teasing him, "You already rested on the plane. You just like to sleep, especially in the car." When Tamal Krishna asked Prabhupada if he would see any important guests, Prabhupada replied that he would only see Mr. Bogilal Patel and Mr. Mahadevi if they came. A few minutes later, as if summoned, Mr. Mahadevi showed up and was brought before Prabhupada. Although usually very talkative, Mr. Mahadevi seemed too shocked by Srila Prabhupada's appearance to speak as freely as usual. At Prabhupada's request, however, he described the present political climate in India. Prabhupada asked to be raised up, and he showed an unusual amount of interest in the report. "They're missing the point," he said. "The whole world is. This is the disease of the body. One party is no better than the other. It is stool, on one side or the other. What can they do?" Although Prabhupada was not able to go down to the temple for seeing Radha Rasa Bihari, he daily asked to see their picture, which he would look upon lovingly. He could also hear the Arti Kirtans coming from the temporary temple. Then one day he asked that the framed picture of Radha Rasa Bihari be fixed to his bedpost so that he could see them always. On awakening one morning, Prabhupada immediately began talking. Every living entity is suffering. From Brahma down to the ant, there is no happiness. And then he closed his eyes. Later he awoke and said, "Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya dharaptiya." Tamal Krishna asked Prabhupada if he was thinking of these things while resting. "Yes," Prabhupada replied, "I was dreaming." Brahmananda Swami arrived from England, and Prabhupada spoke with him of how the senior disciples would have to maintain what he had given them. "You cannot expect me to have a young body like you," he said. "You cannot expect me to live forever. It will have to depend upon Krishna." Brahmananda listened with mixed pleasure and pain. He said that Prabhupada's quarters were beautiful, and that not only these quarters, but everything in the Krishna conscious movement was simply made for Srila Prabhupada's pleasure. "I cannot take these with me," Prabhupada replied. "I am leaving them for you to use." Jayapataka Swami arrived from Mayapur, asking Srila Prabhupada to sign a legal statement concerning the recent attack on the ISKCON Center in Mayapur. Tamal Krishna said that Prabhupada had already written his will, stating that everything in his name belonged to ISKCON. He didn't want anything further to do with management. Srila Prabhupada confirmed this, saying, "Now there is no other way but to make me completely aloof from all management." Prabhupada wanted to stay absorbed in hearing the holy name in the Srimad Bhāgavatam. He liked to sit up in bed wearing his reading spectacles and looking at the photo of Radha Rasa Bihari, while a devotee read aloud from Srimad Bhāgavatam. For hours at a time, he would meditate in this way, hearing and seeing Krishna. This was the medicine he desired. Those who observed him in this way could understand that he was completely transcendental to thoughts of his body, and that he was relishing the reading with great relief. When Tamal Krishna suggested that these readings go on each day, Srila Prabhupada said, "This is the most important thing. Read as much as possible." Srila Prabhupada ki. Has everyone been to Prabhupada's quarters in Bombay? Only Tulsi here? I'm sure Mataji has been. Srila Prabhupada's quarters in Bombay. They're very opulent. And of course, his bedroom is there, and his bed is there, where the picture of Radha Rasa Bihari was fixed. Srila Prabhupada is Krishna's great soldier. Reading from Srimad Bhāgavatam, 3rd Canto, 24th chapter, text 14, chapter titled The Renunciation of Kardama Muni. Ima duhitarak satyas. Ima duhitarak satyas. Everyone has it on their phone? I can chant while you gather it. Usually they have it, but they don't have it there. Ima duhitarak satyas. Tava vatsa sum Madhyamaha Tava Vatsa Sumadhyamaha Sargam Etang Prabhavaiswar Sargam Etang Prabhavaiswar Brahma Shint Yatnanekada Brahma yes yanekadaha yekadha. Did you find it, Tulsi? Okay, so. No, Tulsi first. Imaduhitarak satyas Tavavatsa sumadhyamaha Dargam etang prabhavaiswar Brahma yasyant yanekada Imaduhitarak satyas Tavavatsa sumadhyamaha Dargametang prabhavaiswar Brahma yasyant yanekada Imaduhitarak satyas Tavavatsa sumadhyamaha Brahma yasyant yanekada. Ladies. Imaduhitarak satyas Tavavatsa sumadhyamaha Sargametang prabhavaiswar Brahma yasyant yanekada Imaduhitarak satyas Tavavatsa sumadhyamaha Sargametang prabhavaiswar Brahma yasyant yanekada Tavavatsa sumadhyamaha Sargametang prabhavaiswar Brahma yasyant yanekada Ima, these Duhitara daughters Satya chaste Tava your Vatsa O my dear son Sumadhyamaha thin-waisted Sargam creation Etam this Prabhavai by descendants Swai their own Brahma Yashyanti they will increase Anekadha in various ways. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Lord Brahma then praised Kardama Muni's 9 daughters, saying, all your thin-waisted daughters are certainly very chaste. I am sure they will increase this creation by their own descendants in various ways. Please repeat. Lord Brahma then praised Kardama Muni's 9 daughters, saying, all your thin-waisted daughters are certainly very chaste. I am sure they will increase this creation by their own descendants in various ways. Purport. In the beginning of creation, Brahma was concerned, more or less, with increasing the population. And when he saw that Kardama Muni had already begotten 9 nice daughters, he was hopeful that through the daughters many children would come who would take charge of the creative principle of the material world. He was therefore happy to see them. The word Sumadhyama means a good daughter of a beautiful woman. If she has a thin waist, a woman is considered very beautiful. All the daughters of Kardama Muni were of the same beautiful feature. Om Jnana Tamrandasya Ganachana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Vankarte Gurum Rat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dedataranam. Tulsi, is there any feedback about the sound down in the kitchen or any place? Anybody complaining? This is one of the shortcomings of the material world, right? Everything has to be arranged just so. The amplifier has to be on, the volume has to be set, the mic has to be... So many intermediate arrangements just to conduct ordinary affairs. I'm sure the sages at Naimisharanya had no such problems. And there were thousands. Shri Shivara Govinda Dev Ki Jai. So how is it possible for any of the speakers of the Bhāgavatam to address a forest full of sages? How was that conducted? It was obviously not by screaming at the top of their lungs. Right? So there must have been some mystical aspect of this knowledge transmission. Just like Lord Brahma, Adi Kaviye, he didn't hear Krishna externally. Sarvasya Chaham Riddhi Sani Vishto. He heard Krishna from within. And this same principle is available to us as well. Pratyaksha Bhagamam Dharmyam. This practical realization doesn't mean necessarily, it can, that all of a sudden you have an epiphany. It can be like that. Some people call that an aha moment. You know, they're doing something, they're trying to rack their brain to get some solution, and all of a sudden it comes like that. And the most famous of that is, who knows, what is that? Eureka. Who said Eureka? Who said Eureka? Archimedes. He was struggling to find out how to weigh something, how to calculate the weight of an object that could not be weighed. And what happened? Everybody knows? He sat down in his bathtub, and when he sat down in his bathtub, the water overflowed. And immediately he realized that he could measure the quantity of water displaced, and that would give him the weight of the object that was displacing the water. So that was the Eureka moment. So many, every devotee has a certain ability that is being given to him by Krishna, how to, just like here where Lord Brahma is happy when he's considering how the 9 daughters of Kardama Muni are going to propagate the population. And Prabhupada has similarly planted the seeds for the propagation of Krishna consciousness. And he's also happy when he sees that the devotees are preaching. He's happier than we are, as it's described in the Lilamrita. And we read about that passage in Los Angeles in 1969 when Prabhupada was introducing the next level of deity worship. And there were comments, and Prabhupada he was so enlivened by the devotees, more so than they were, by their preaching efforts, by their practical application, by seeing them engaged, knowing that the only way that this could happen was through this pratyaksha bhagamam dharmyam, that they had practically realized certain aspects of the philosophy which allowed them to act in a certain capacity. And that capacity is not limited. We've seen so many devotees. The one example Prabhupada gives of Harikesh Prabhu. At the time, Prabhupada said, I knew this boy, this intelligent boy, that if he went to Poland, he would have success. You know, Harikesh Prabhu was not so convinced himself, but Prabhupada was 100% convinced that something would come of his preaching there, simply by following the orders of the spiritual master. And this has been repeated since the beginning of the movement. Devotees going to San Francisco, devotees going to London, going to Montreal. This is simply the repetition of a successful formula. When something is successful, you don't try to change it. That leads to some adulteration when people are trying to, and we've had experience of that as well. And so we've also learned from that experience what to do, what not to do. The symptom of a person who's advancing in spiritual life is that he realizes what should be done, what should not be done. Common sense. That famous interaction between Prabhupada and one of his disciples. And the last instruction, because so many questions were coming, and Prabhupada said, use your common sense. And if you don't have any, ask someone who does. Right? So this is, my godbrother Urjaswat, whenever we were preaching to new bhaktas, many were argumentative. And he would say, in a very calm demeanor, and he was a big person. He was not the least intimidating, but he had a certain level of gravitas, authority. So he said, if you have a question, it means you don't have an answer. And of course, that would usually shut the arguments down. If you've come, if you have an answer, tell us. What's the answer? What's the answer to birth, death, disease, and old age? But they don't have an answer. So therefore, they were obliged to listen. And of course, many became devotees and went on to do wonderful things in the movement. So this is the propagation, the same essential principle, except that we're not simply trying to create children by some physical intercourse. But the process of making devotees is the same. It takes time. It takes the right environment. Of course, that, Prabhupada uses analogies like a potent man and a fertile woman. Then naturally there will be children. The two have to be complete in that way. You can't have infertility and impotency. Then there's nothing. So everything has to be there, and your environment has to be created that fosters that interaction. So the temple is such a place to cultivate knowledge. In everything that we're doing, it is not the simple act that appears externally to be sweeping the floor or mopping the floor. No. That is the essential act of cleansing the heart, of negating the inferior modes of nature. Right? Passion and ignorance, they're prominent everywhere. We look outside the door, there's nothing but passion and ignorance. Prabhupada repeated that. Who is that author who said that God is in the country? Right? This is when you go out there, the country is more or less in the mode of goodness. Unless of course, you're importing or exporting all these nonsense, things to the country with you. But otherwise, it's very peaceful. People, why do people go on the weekend away, even devotees? They want to go on a hike. They want to go into nature. They've been struggling in the city, and they want to break. But when you consider things carefully, technically, this is just another aberration of the mind trying to dictate what it thinks or what someone thinks should be a suitable activity. But when we don't have any experience of the sadhus in India or any place like that. Of course, someone might say, well, India is different. It's all transcendental, this and that. So what about when we first went to Vrindavan, it was a village. And then gradually became a congested environment, more hellish than the cities like Delhi or Bombay, where the air quality index is 500. It doesn't read any higher than that. That is the topmost. So does one think that I should get a break from Vrindavan? I should leave Vrindavan and go someplace where the air quality index is better? Yeah, people do think like that. This is not good for my health. I have to leave. But would the sadhus say that? Would any sadhus say, no, I'm going to... Yeah, maybe. But then maybe that sadhu is just a sadhu externally. He doesn't have the internal commitment to Guru and Krishna. You know, what if you're in charge of the Goshala and you think the air quality is so bad, but you can't take the cows up into the Himalayas with you? 200 cows, what do? Put them on a train? Buy everybody an Indrail pass? And say, we're going to go for a few days up into the mountains? No. If you're in charge of the Goshala, you're there. You stay there. So this commitment is just like the devotee's commitment to the mission of the spiritual master. This is, in one sense, it's much more, how can you say, important, but that may not be the right term. Essential. That nothing should disturb one's determination to fulfill the orders of the spiritual master. It should. And anything that seems to be interfering in that regard should be understood to be Maya. And if one can cultivate that attitude, then he will not be disturbed when there are such technical opportunities for disturbance, the greatest of which is death. Right? If someone is sick, immediately he stops everything and he just wants to concentrate on getting his health back. After all, Prabhupada said, health first. Right? But if your health concerns take you away from Krishna consciousness, then there was some misunderstanding. Health is only for serving Krishna and Guru. It's not health for health's sake, not to be a healthy person. Right? There are, what do they call them? Influencers, right? On Instagram and other places, other platforms. Influencers. One such influencer, 30 years old, he was known for his strong physique, like Mr. Universe. And what happened? He suddenly died at the age of 30. Suddenly died. So this health, so-called physique, is not going to help you. Externally, he was a perfect specimen, right? He even had a thin waist. But he's dead. So now his influence, and what happens to all those influencers, to the persons he was influencing? What happens to them? He had tens of thousands of people following him. But will they learn anything? Will they realize, oh, I could die also? Will that thought cross their minds? Maybe I should seek out some higher knowledge. That if this person died, then certainly I can die. I'm not in as good shape as he is. But we don't. That's the nature of material conditioning, is that we don't generally see things in the perspective that allows us that, well, what do the karmis say, to think outside the box, so to speak. You know, and depending on what box it is, you know, your box may be your job or your family or your car or your dog. There's so many things that are boxing you in, so to speak. And so therefore that they have the term, to think outside that box. And of course they have so many names for it. Some people, they'll use, when you're in a seminar, you have to use big words. You have to say paradigm shift. You can't say box. You got to make it more. And so this way they catch people. It's the same thing, but when they say use big words, then they think, oh, this person is very intelligent. I should listen to him. He's going to help me shift my paradigm, whatever that means. Right? But there's so. In the professional world, and of course many here know all these things, they have so many certifications and classifications. They have something called 6 Sigma. And you put it on your resume, and they say, oh, it's a good thing to have on your resume. You're familiar with these various protocols and principles for best business practices. But ultimately, it's nothing. There's no value. There's no intrinsic value. There's no lasting value. It's all temporary. My godbrother Kapindra, he was a little eccentric. And sometimes he would mutter to himself, because his situation was he joined probably about 1970, 71. And he was from a very wealthy family that had a very famous jewelry enterprise in the financial district. Financial district means Wall Street, like that. When he joined the devotees, his family was devastated. And so after a couple of years, and he left New York to escape their attempts to get him, kidnap him in various ways. So he was in Philadelphia distributing books. But, somebody found out and they kidnapped him. One day he was there, next day he was gone. And nobody saw Kapindra for, I guess it might have been 3 years. And they had incarcerated him in a mental institution and subjected him to the most horrific, basically it's torture, it's electroshock therapy. Electroshock therapy. They're trying to burn Krishna out of your mind. They put these electrodes on and they turn up the juice. What could be more hellish than this for a devotee? Anyway, to get out of that, he had to seemingly comply. But at his first opportunity, he ran away and came back to now the temple was not in Henry Street anymore, where he joined. We were on 55th Street. So he came to 55th Street. And it had been so long, and his appearance had changed so drastically due to this electroshock therapy. He had no control over his facial muscles. So it's similar to something called Tourette's syndrome. I don't know if anyone knows what Tourette's syndrome is, where you have no control of your facial motions and you just blurt out words. Usually not very nice words. And so his face was always contorted, and he showed up at the temple. Nobody recognized him. Thin, frail, completely. He looked like he'd aged 30 years. And the reason I'm telling this story is that he had to constantly remind himself. So he would walk around muttering under his breath, "Show is only temporary, show is only temporary," which is the preface to the Brahma Samhita, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. The whole show is only temporary. And I've told this before in the class, but that's not what he was saying, because as temple commander, I was engaging him in different areas. He later went on to run our very successful Govinda store and do other things like these gopi panels. He was an expert salesman. And he sold these same panels to who? Anybody know who? Donald J. Trump. Sitting in a penthouse in Trump Tower. So, but in this time, at that time when he just came from this electric shock therapy, so he wasn't saying show is only temporary. That was what he said to me when I asked him, why are you walking around mumbling S-H-I-T, S-H-I-T, S-H-I-T? I said, you're in the temple. What are you doing? Why are you saying this? And then he said, show is only temporary. And of course, the connotation is that, yes, what is temporary? And just like Prabhupada said here, stool, dry stool, wet stool. We were just reading in Leelamrita. Whole material world is just this dry stool, wet stool. You're thinking that, oh, the dry side is very nice. The wet side is not nice. But the whole material world is just S-H-I-T, as Kapinja would say. So we have to have this conviction. And you can't get this conviction if you're thinking, I can go and escape someplace and take a break. You can do that. But that's not going to really change anything. You know, that's what the karmis do. What's the definition? What's it called? Bhogatyag. Bhogatyag. Alternate enjoyment and renunciation. There's so many nice allegories in the Vedic scripture. And of course, we wouldn't know any of them without Srila Prabhupada. Because he perfectly assimilated them and gave them to us in a way that we could understand and relate to. And therefore, he was able to capture so many young men and women who had completely rejected society in every way possible. But because they didn't have an alternative, when Prabhupada came and gave them a perfect alternative, it was ready-made, custom-made. Just like you go to a tailor and you get something custom-made, just exactly to your dimensions. Perfect fit. So all these devotees, when they heard Srila Prabhupada, they thought, this is perfect. You know, this is the absolute truth being delivered by a person who embodies it and exemplifies it. And so therefore, that was Prabhupada's miracle. Right? And we were also reading, Ram Roy was reading the apple story the other day. Yeah? That the mystic yogi was pulling apples from behind people's ears. And Prabhupada responded very matter-of-factly, you know, all these devotees all over the world, there are so many temples, and in all these temples, they are conducting so many offerings, just like the one we had just right now. And in all these temples, they're offering these apples to Krishna. So we have unlimited apples. We don't have to pull them from behind one apple, from behind somebody's ear. These apples are appearing miraculously by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, through the agency of the devotees who have accepted this process, patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhakti prachati. So everything is perfect and complete in Krishna consciousness. There's no lack. And if you think there's a lack, then that is something missing. All right? Otherwise, how can we be reading that Om Purnamadak Piramidam Purnam? How can we, that the complete whole is complete? And then think that, no, it's not. I need to add something. You know, Prabhupada used to chide, let's say Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Prabhupada used to have a rasa with Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Because Tamal Krishna Maharaj had an ego. Everyone who knows, this is not a secret, everyone who knows Tamal Krishna Maharaj knew he had an ego. And sometimes it would get in his way. And Prabhupada was practically the only person who could curb that ego. For his benefit, because he knew that Tamal Krishna was sincere and that he would do so many things to push on the movement. Right? And therefore, he gave a little more attention. And that's the formula, typically, that the father gives more attention to the son who requires additional instruction, support, encouragement, because that's the duty of the father, to try to make sure that everyone achieves their full potential. So anyway, there's not much to say about this purport. This obviously, Kardama Muni has fulfilled his obligation to his father, Lord Brahma, who's now expressing his satisfaction that he's done his job as a progenitor, and now he's the renunciation of Kardama Muni. Now he's free to leave, because he's, not in this verse, but the 9 sages will take these 9 daughters as their brides. And so these progenitors, they're going to populate the universe. And that's his duty. And now that he's fulfilled his duty, he can retire. And of course, from the narration, we can understand that Kardama Muni was always aloof. It's not that he was ever entangled at any time. That would be a miscalculation on our part, to try to compare him to someone who's a henpecked husband, who's just a plaything in the hands of his wife. No, he's always aloof. Because that is the training that from an early age, and therefore Prabhupada emphasized that there should be this instruction, this Gurukula, Brahmachari Gurukula, because if a student can remain fixed in his discipline, including celibacy, up till the age of 18, then practically speaking, his life will be successful in every other aspect. All right, this is the one thing Prabhupada said in that respect, is that he will retain the power of memory. He will be like Naistik, this Shrutidhar, that learning will come easy for him, and that he will live to be 100 years old. So these are the 2 things one gets from. And now it's a bit of a fad. You see also on these posts that people are touting the benefits of celibacy. But they don't really understand what is the purpose of it. Just they feel empowered to some extent that they are controlling that particular urge. But the rest, there's so many other material desires are continuing unabated. And they'll also get tired of doing that, because there's no realization, there's no conviction. Right? The quality of the Brahman, what is that? Samodamo tapasocham. Arjavam, Jnanam Vijnanam Astakyam, Jnanam Vijnanam. So Jnanam is knowledge, Vijnanam is realized knowledge. Sometimes in the Western definition, it's said as wisdom. They value people who have experiential knowledge, and they label it as wisdom. It's not real wisdom, but it is realized knowledge, maybe technical knowledge. That a person is very expert, he knows how to do something, and he makes it look easy. Maybe he even puts a YouTube video out there, how to fix the tractor. So anyway, there's so many things like that. But you do learn by engaging in the act based on the knowledge which is being transmitted, that if, say, everyone here has some understanding what is the benefit of chanting Hare Krishna? Otherwise, we wouldn't remain. So that benefit has already been practically realized. Pratyaksha bhagamam dharmyam. And the benefit of that realization is susukam kartamavyam. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. We're getting some joy out of this. When Ram Roy takes the Harinam party out for 4, 5, 6 hours a day or more, no one is forcing anyone. People are naturally attracted. And the more they chant, the more they experience that pleasure. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantas cha dridha vrataha namasyantas chamam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. So it's a very nice verse. So we have to try to experience that which will give us benefit beyond our immediate confines, that I don't have to go anyplace else. Wherever I am, I can experience this internal reservoir of pleasure. Everything is there. I have to know how to access it. What is the code? Because like here, we have so many combination locks. I said, Prabhu, what's the code to the lotus room? What's the code to this room? You have to, in order to enter into the room, you need the code. So we have that code. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everything is there. And the more we chant and engage in Krishna's service, then the more we realize that complete nature of this self-contained self-realization. Doesn't require anything else. I don't need a library to achieve it, of various books. Yeah. Yeah. We don't see that when we used to travel in India. You find these sages in a cave, and they're there with their japamala. They left everything. They don't have their books. They didn't have an iPad. They didn't have an iPhone. They didn't have anything. Just them and their books. Because once they had the realization, they didn't need anything else. Brahma bhuta prasanatma na sochiti na kankshati. Those are the symptoms. You don't need to collect so many things to think, no, I need this. Because if you think you need it, then when you don't have it, you'll lament. Oh, I lost my, it's natural. But one should be attached to something which is actually spiritual. If you misplaced your japa mala that your spiritual master gave you, yes, that's a cause of lamentation. We should have taken better care. That type of carelessness it's awkward. But it's not insurmountable. Because the spiritual master gave you the name, the bija, just the device to help you. But the main thing is that he gave you the name. And that can never be taken away unless you also carelessly abandon that. All right? So don't devolve to that situation where you think, no, I don't have to. I've surpassed that. We've seen in our society. You cannot leave the service. You cannot leave the instructions. We say it often. Why? Because it's an essential understanding that when we're reading now, Prabhupada's, Krishna's great soldier. Prabhupada he's getting ready to leave his body. And the question would come up that why does the spiritual master get sick? Prabhupada could have said so many things, and occasionally he did in different ways. But one thing he said that we were there that struck us very strongly was that because my second initiated disciples are not chanting their Gayatri mantra. So this was, quite a shock. Sometimes we think that this is just a formality. But this is an essential link. It's not just a ritualistic, like we're chanting in the morning. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritualistic activities. Chanting Gayatri, chanting Hare is not a ritualistic activity. But so we have to take great care to somehow or other settle our minds through the various opportunities afforded to us through this amazing Krishna conscious movement, whether it's book distribution or deity service, or cleansing the temple, or creating an environment conducive for others to come in and experience the joy that we all experienced when we came. Unlimited opportunities, to please the spiritual master. So we should try to take advantage of all of them as much as possible. Just like there's the 9 aspects of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. But besides those, there's unlimited. The spiritual master has given us so many ways, so many instructions, thousands of letters, thousands of lectures, thousands of purports. Has everyone understood every single one? The famous story of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta lecturing on 3 months on one verse from the Srimad Bhāgavatam. 3 months. Just like, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the explanations of the Atmarama verse, the 64 explanations. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta lectured for 3 months. So this is the unlimited nature. And it expands on our desire to please the spiritual master. That's how one devotee can go to London or San Francisco or to North Carolina or wherever it was. And when Prabhupada received the news back, Prabhupada, now there's a preaching center in North Carolina, Prabhupada would be ecstatic. He'd be so happy because he understands that that devotee is trying to please him. And Krishna and Prabhupada are reciprocating. So this is, again, pratyaksha. You realize it. You experience it. Whether you experienced it then when Srila Prabhupada was on the planet and you saw him personally appreciate something you were doing, or you experience it through that realization, through one of the Bhaktivedanta purports, that somehow or other that purport comes to life for you in such a way that you understand that eternal nature of the relationship, that how we are parampara servants, that we are servants of our spiritual master, he is a servant of his spiritual master. So being a parampara servant is not a cheap thing. You're getting all the blessings. Going back to the Lord Brahma himself, who is expressing his satisfaction and pleasure here. So this is, remarkable. We have such a legacy. People are proud of their material families. Oh, my family is, Henry Ford. Yeah, there's some pride in that regard, especially if you're like Ambarish Prabhu and you use it to engage, to free those ancestors from all their nonsense, sinful activity. But if one is, just like one feels some obligation to his father, so should we feel any less obligation to our spiritual master? Or our Param Guru? No, it should be even stronger because that realization is based on something transcendental. That love is not based on a temporary connection. It's based on an eternal connection. So therefore, that bond should be so strong it cannot be broken. But one has to, make sure that that bond is intact by his connection, by his service attitude, by his adherence to the instructions of the spiritual master, by his engaging in such a way to accept responsibility and then accept more responsibility. And more. So that should be the test. How much responsibility can I accept? How much of the burden of management can I relieve Srila Prabhupada so that he could concentrate? And that was then. And now it's similar. We should be able to do things in such a way that there should not be any necessity for, some auditing authority to come and check you out and make sure that everything is going according to Prabhupada's instructions. It should be automatic. But being in the situation that we're in, occasionally there are discrepancies that have to be addressed. And it should also be done with the right mood, the right intent, with a desired outcome for the benefit of all. So we should every day somehow or other find a way to renew this commitment. Right? Out in the material world, in order to get people to get to work every day and to be satisfied in a dead-end job, they have to have so many motivational posters. You walk into these, places, whatever. It could be a bank, could be a hospital, and there's always motivational posters, and one of them will always stand out, like failure is not an option. That's one you see quite often. Failure is not an option, and it's true, but they don't know what the opposite definition is. That failure of what? Failure to not have sufficient dead animals on a griddle to serve your customers. What is that? What is that failure? So we should have something within us that keeps us every day desiring to be undeviating in our devotion to the spiritual master and Krishna. You have to find that purpose. Okay? Everyone has some idea, but you really have to, hone in on it. It can't just be this vague thing that when I'm mature in 10 years, it'll come to me. No, everything starts from the day you come in with serving. And that attitude will mature into various aspects. And whether it's serving as a floor sweeper or serving as a GBC or as the head pujari, whatever it is, something has to be there. One cannot remain undesignated. And it's not that we adopt something artificially like I'm a book distributor. That's not necessarily a permanent station in life. I'm a devotee, yes. I'm a servant of the spiritual master, yes. I'm an inmate at Radha Govinda Temple. Prabhupada used to address the devotees in New Vrindavan as inmates. Because everyone is, whether they know it or not, is a prisoner in one way or another. You're either a prisoner in the kingdom of Maya, or you can voluntarily surrender to be a prisoner of love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? It has the same connotation, that one will not escape from it. So he has to feel that there's nothing I can do to run away from this situation that will be in my interest. There's no escaping. You can't escape death, old age, disease, or birth, except if you surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and become His submissive servant. So hopefully that will be everyone's conclusion at a certain point in his Krishna conscious trajectory. And he can adjust, right? When you're on the field of battle or on the artillery range, you have what's called fire for range, right? You want to find out. You aim the projectile to get an idea where it's going to land. And you adjust it, the elevation or whatever, in order the inclination, declination, until you more or less have achieved that targeting desired outcome. And then they have fire for effect. So now that you know what to do, now you completely engage yourself wholeheartedly. And you jump in, and that's the definition of enthusiasm. So if you're not finding that enthusiasm, you have to re-examine your sadhana. And then until you can eliminate whatever it is that's interfering with that utsahan. And it could be any one of those other 6, atihara, priyasa, chapa, japa, niyamagraha, jana sangha. So it can be any one of those. And you have to identify, what is it? Why am I not getting the enthusiasm? Why am I not getting the taste? Why am I feeling that this is not fulfilling me? So if you examine and you're sincere, you will find out. Any questions or comments or corrections, suggestions? Sunday is a very special day here. For many people, it will be the first day of the rest of their lives when they walk in that door. And the devotee approaches them in a friendly way and inquires about, their presence. How did you find out about us? Or you saw the Harinam party out at Union Square and you got an invitation card? Welcome to the party. Have you read Bhagavad Gita? Okay, well, here's Bhagavad Gita right here. And then they're going to take it home and they're going to read it and they're going to come back and be a devotee. This is nothing magic about it. Prabhupada established it and it works. So we just have to follow it in that way. And we'll experience the same success that Prabhupada experienced, that we've all observed. And we just continue in that regard without any false idea of changing or so-called, when this is, the thing that comes to my mind is when the devotees thought, let's distribute records, musical records, or paintings. Somehow or other, books fell out of fashion because they had to collect more money. Okay? That's a deviation. And it took a severe toll on the society. And hopefully we've learned from our mistakes. It's not that the end justifies the means. No. That was the thing. Well, if we can collect the money and use it for preaching. Okay. But in the meantime, it wasn't good for the devotees. It wasn't the right impression to give to the people that we were meeting. Yeah, there was nothing beneficial. It was a lose-lose situation. And it became very obvious very quickly. Our only business is to distribute books. That's our only business. That's why the Vaisheshika nicely wrote, our family business. This is our family business. Distribute books, distribute books, distribute books. So we want to please Srila Prabhupada? Yes, we have to distribute books. But everything has to go on simultaneously. We're enlivened because we're able to have our regular association with the devotees, the deities, and prasadam. And this gives us the strength to continue against all obstacles. Maya is not sitting around. Biggest Maya was that, somehow or other this temple was almost lost. And there are instances like that all over the world. You see it happen. But you have to be willing to fight. You have to look inside yourself and think, am I willing to fight? All right? What did Prabhupada say? Here's a chapter in, Lord Krishna, of course, says, armed with knowledge stands and fight. But then Prabhupada said, yes, chant Hare Krishna and fight. That was the chapter before this one in Leela Amrita. Right? Chant Hare Krishna and fight. So you have to fix yourself up. Not that you run away the first time that Maya gives you a little trouble. We've all seen this. You just shake it off. Right? You walk it off. That's what happens. You fall down, you get up. But if you stay down, thinking that, why should I get up? I'm just going to get knocked down again. No. So, Sunday feast, everyone's ready? The guests are going to be coming? Is the temple going to be clean? The lobby clean? The restrooms clean? Everything clean? The prasadam hall? Everything should be how we would want it to be, for if we were inviting people into our own homes. Right? It shouldn't be anything less. This is Krishna's home. It should be head above what we would think. We should go that much above and beyond the call of cleanliness. Not just settle for it's okay. It's acceptable. No, if it's acceptable, it's not acceptable. That should be our attitude. Any other? I don't want to keep talking. Yes, but you have to speak a little loudly. Yeah, I can't hear you at all. I don't think we even have a mic that works. But if you don't mind coming, we can.
When there's a issue that happens if devotees are trying to practice Krishna consciousness and they neglect any aspect of their mental or physical health, where it becomes an impediment to Krishna consciousness, and it also becomes a deterrent it doesn't attract people. If devotees are not mentally and physically healthy, then it gives the impression that becoming a devotee means
we don't ignore, and that's a good question. Thank you for asking it. No, Prabhupada told us that health first, but it should be health with a purpose, not health for the sake of health. Obviously, if we're not in a condition to execute our service, then we're not taking care of something that Krishna has given us specifically for that purpose. When Sanatana Goswami, due to ill health, wanted to commit suicide under the Rathayatra cart because he thought, I'm useless, what can I do? My body is so diseased. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped him, physically stopped him. And how did he even know that what Sanatana's intentions were? Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead knows everything about us. And he said, you cannot do this because this is not your body, it's actually my body. And I have great things to do using your body. So if we think that, yes, I want to be healthy simply to assist the spiritual master, then even if I'm afflicted with something that seems debilitating, I am not mentally affected by it. I can understand that, yes, maybe my body is not going to allow me to engage in this aspect of devotional service. So I have to find another way to do it. Fortunately, we're not so limited nowadays that, someone may feel that if I'm incapacitated in one way that I can't do anything. No, we have so many ways to serve. Like I said, my friend Kapindra, because of the shock treatment, he couldn't control his facial features at all. Could hardly control his body. It looked like somebody with palsy and Tourette's syndrome. So externally, he would appear to be extremely disadvantaged in propagating Krishna consciousness. But he was one of the most effective preachers. As a matter of fact, and this is a unique thing that anyone who was there could see, as soon as he would start to preach, all of his bodily tremors and facial tics would stop. And he would appear perfectly normal. And as soon as he would stop preaching about Krishna or to anything about it, it would just revert, uncontrollable. It was difficult to look at, actually. You couldn't look at him and conduct a conversation if it wasn't about Krishna, because it's like somebody like making faces at you continuously. You can't concentrate. But as soon as you would speak about Krishna, all those things would stop. And he was extremely articulate, extremely erudite, super intelligent. But because of that, the way he was kidnapped and subjected to that horrendous shock treatment, he appeared completely debilitated until he opened his mouth to speak about Krishna. And then he was just like an angel. So these things are there. If one wants to overcome them, Krishna will give you whatever you need. And if he had not come back to Krishna consciousness, he would just be a vegetable. That was where his body was taking him. Not just his body, but his mind. But he brought it back under his control. So I've seen miracles if a devotee is determined to serve Krishna. Krishna, ananyas chintayanto mam. Krishna will preserve what you have, carry what you lack. He's giving these promises, not just to get some points. The Bhagavad Gita is our guide for life. It's not just, that I'm convinced now that I'm not this body and now I can close the book and put it away. No. It's there every time you open up Bhagavad Gita, and for whatever reason, you will find the answer that you're looking for. That's always been my experience. Because it's transcendental, and whether it seems directed at your particular dilemma, Krishna's words have a catalytic effect, and Prabhupada's words in the same way, to allow the knowledge that you required in order to address that issue to manifest. We have to give Krishna a chance, but sometimes we just don't do it. We won't pick up the book, we won't open it, we won't think, we'll do everything. We'll go to an astrologer, we'll go to this, but we'll go to that, but we won't go and ask, one of our senior devotees, that, what should I do? A person who had been in this society, been in the movement for 50 years, they have a lot of experience. You can get a lot of benefit from hearing from them. They've walked that path in every ashram, basically, almost every ashram. And many, of course, didn't need to do that because they had superior realization early on. So they avoided all the intermediate difficulties, right? Prabhupada said, better to remain brahmachari. But he said it tongue-in-cheek. He said, all the women should get married and all the men should remain brahmachari. So obviously, that's, what do they call that? There's a certain term for that type of dilemma. like but anyway, I forget the term.
Oxymoron.
Yeah, I like that stuff. So yeah, so everything, all the answers are here. We simply have to take advantage of them. And to the extent that we do, we'll be successful in anything we engage in Krishna service. And that success will further enthuse us to continue to serve the spiritual master more and more. It's very, how can you say, contagious. That you want to, that enthusiasm to help others, to engage others, to do something for Krishna, to not be idle, to just, not be satisfied just, ruminating on some philosophical realization that you had 20 years ago that is sustaining you. No, you have to distill it. Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana. You have to distill it. Don't let your intelligence become many-branched. It has to be laser-focused. Laser-focused. After all, this is the highest. We should be putting everything that we have, that we've accumulated in this lifetime and others, to achieve the success that our spiritual master expects from us, which is to become 100% servant of Krishna, and to engage others in such a way that they become 100% servant of Krishna. And that will do the best for everyone. That's the Dharma projita kaitavocha paramo nirmatsaram satam. That, everything else is cheating. We don't want to cheat anybody. Don't give them something sub-religious and some, off the cuff. Yeah, just be a good person. No, this is not the solution to anyone's problems. Because there's no one can have that, know what that means. Just be a good person. Be a good devotee, yes. Because a good devotee means, what's that verse? Harava bhakta shikuto mahadguner. What's that? What's the first part, Ram? Yas yasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana. Suner gunastatra samasate sara. Harava bhakta shikuto mahadguner. Manoratenasati daivatobihi. A devotee develops all the good qualities of the demigods. Automatically. Automatically. Right? But those who are not trying to follow the path of knowledge, they're left, what does it say? Manoratenasati, hovering on the mental platform, the chariot of the mind. Mano means mind, and rata means chariot, like rata yacha. Manoratenasati daivatobihi. Simply hovering. He doesn't know where to land, doesn't know where to apply himself. So we cannot be like that. You cannot just like a helicopter can't hover forever. It has to land. So you have to figure it out. Where's the landing pad? Here's the Krishna landing pad. Here's the Maya landing pad. You always have the choice. You want to make sure you land in the right heliport. All right? There's a heliport right on the East River. And occasionally what happens is they land in the water, not purposely. And then you die. Tourists go up in there, and I don't know, it was probably a few years ago now. You think you're going to go for an enjoying ride. It's a 30-minute ride around Manhattan Island, basically. You go up in the helicopter, you fly around, and you come back, and you're supposed to land on the heliport, on the pier. And the helicopter, for whatever reason, experience of difficulty, right as it's about to land in the pier, it fell into the water. And they don't just, float. It's not like a boat. There's shifting weight. The rotors are spinning around. So there's all these different vectors affecting the stability. And the thing flips over. And everybody's buckled in. That's what happens. Then they pull it up a few hours later. And, of course, everyone's still in it, strapped in, dead. Because this is the most common thing that happens. When my sons were in school in the Navy, there's a Pensacola. It's where you get trained up for what they call air crew. If you're going to be in a plane or a helicopter, there's a good chance you're going to have to, what they call ditch in the water, have an emergency water evacuation. But they don't make it easy for you. This is also a bit of a separation. They want to see who's really qualified. So they put you in this mock-up. There's a big pool indoors and a hangar. And so it's a standard helicopter configuration, just like the ones you'll be flying in when you graduate. And you have a helmet with blacked out goggles. So you can't see. Totally blacked out. They put you in a helicopter and they strap you in. And then to simulate a crash landing, this thing is suspended by a crane up in the air. They drop you 20 feet, boom. And then they rotate this simulator upside down. So now you're upside down, strapped in with blacked out goggles so you can't see. And what's the mission? The mission is to get out. But what do you have to do first? So the first thing is to feel for your shipmate next to you and release him. And then you release yourself. All right? So this is a routine. And many, of course, don't make it because you're underwater, you're holding your breath, and you're trying to get out of this fairly sophisticated harness and simultaneously release the harness to the person next to you. And then swim up, fully clothed. With boots and a helmet and everything else. So Krishna consciousness is actually much easier. You don't have to be in a situation like that to know what it's like. Adanta gobira bishatam tamishram punak punashchavata chavananam. We've had the analogy of the dark well. We know what it is. So we can, with all this information, you avoid it. Because when you're in that dark well, nothing can get you out. It says, not by joint conference. Prabhupada used that translation. It's translated different places in different, either in the Chaitanya Charitamrita or the Bhāgavatam. But he said, not by joint conferences. People gather around, they want to solve some problem. No. But by association of devotees, by chanting, by engaging in a devotional service, then one is automatically freed. He won't do the punak punashchavata chavananam, which means what? Chewing the chewed. Chewing the chewed. He won't engage. He said, no, it's already been done. I've seen people doing that. Why would I want to do the same thing? So we have to learn like that. So thank you for allowing me to speak a little more than perhaps, as Mother Charanti would say, long-winded. So, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhāgavatam ki, Sri Radha Govinda Dev ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Who wants a garland? Directly off Radharani. You're welcome. Hare Krishna.